strong.
Their will to fight is great.
So what government system does South Korea have?
Republic, democracy.
It is like us.
It is now a democracy.
Okay.
Up until about 20 years ago, it was really one-party rule, a series of civilian leaders. However, since then, they have developed a true multi-party democracy, complete with scandals and wanting to recall the president and you name it.
It's their religion.
In the South, very interesting. In the North, officially, there are majority atheists and a minority of Christians, Buddhists, and certain other smaller religions.
But they
In point of
can't
fact,
identify,
in the
right?
North, I'm sorry?
They can't, in the North, they can't identify themselves as...
That's right. Officially, there are small groups. They are front groups. There is no freedom of religion in the North. Everyone will practice the one state religion of Kim Il-sung-ism. Or Kim Il-sung-ilism, rather. Juche, bowing to the leaders, wearing a lapel. They say jump, you say how high, and nothing else. In the South, it used to be a Confucian country. Later on, it became a Buddhist country, and now is rapidly becoming a Christian country. Majority denomination being Presbyterian.
So they don't believe in any kind of ancestor worship like the Japanese and Chinese?
Depends on the South Korean. If you talk to a member of Confucianism, of course, that's your filial duty, to honor your ancestors. It's part of what maintains the social order. Gods, don't worry about them. Whether they're there or not is really irrelevant. It's about social order, it's about maintenance, it's about doing the things that keep society in order to get the mandate of heaven. The ruler has to have the mandate of heaven. And this is why I say the North is a very religious society. Why the double rainbow? Why the 300 and bowling? Why all this stupidity? Because those are signs that the ruler in Confucianism has the mandate of heaven, the blessing of heaven. And if a ruler has a blessing of heaven, your duty in Confucianism is to obey. So I would argue this is a Confucian society in everything but name. So, in other words, like, now this is real wood. I can't use this. Here, perfect. This is supposedly looks like wood, right? You know, it's actually a veneer and there's chipboard underneath. That's like North Korea. It's got a communist, quasi-communist veneer, but underneath, I would say they are Confucian. Because of this filial piety, this sense of divine mandate of the ruler, and Kim Il-sung was the one who really pushed that hard. Kim Jong-il picked it up, and Kim Jong-un is certainly not discouraging it in any way to date. Questions on that? Observations? Comments? Makes sense? Doesn't make sense? So I would argue that our State Department misses the boat when it says communist or dictatorship. I would argue Confucian monarchy is a better way to understand this country. And that they do many of the bizarre things they do to show the mandate of heaven. For example, when this guy was dying, before he had his heart attack and died in, what was it, 2008, 9?
It was before 11, I know that.
Before 11, yeah. Anyway, when he was dying, he had his younger son, the older son, ran off to Disneyland with a forged passport and got caught by the Japanese. It was a forged passport because North Koreans were not allowed in Japan. Well, after that, Daddy said, "You're not the heir apparent anymore." Went to son number 2 was deemed too soft, so they went to son number 3, Kim Jong-un. Suddenly he gets put. Suddenly, a man who has never been in the military is now a 4-star general. Do you remember the incident when there was a shelling of an island here? A little back and forth, some tensions. Did you hear about the part where this guy allegedly was the general in charge and what a great victory it was? According to the North Koreans. That was done to start to show the military prowess of this man, to show that the mandate of heaven was being shifted to him. Why this on again, off again with the nuclear? It's almost like a little kid in the corner. Pay attention to me, pay attention to me. So he starts doing stuff. We're restarting the reactors. We're going to do this. It means war. Rah, 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 to try to get everyone's attention. A little boy who cried wolf. There's a part of that. But domestically, within North Korea, it reinforces him as having the mandate. It wouldn't use those terms. The heavenly blessing. The right to rule. Absolutely. Without question. Even if it means having your uncle executed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Changing the subject, but didn't I thought I heard where the North was going to allow some relatives from the South to interchange for one day?
They have done that off and on. It may be coming back on. But since 1990, there have been times when the North has allowed South Koreans to meet North Koreans at supervised spots just inside North Korea in this area. They're allowed to have reunions for the day, and then the South Koreans have to go back down. There's also the Kaedong Industrial Park, just on the north side of the border, where South Korean companies are using cheap North Korean labor. Remember, $1,800 a year? Your Samsung? Do the math. And that gets badly needed hard currency into North Korea, and it allows South Korea to sell their goods a little bit cheaper. But in 2013, there was a very tense period for a while, and they shut it down, and they said, the armistice is over, declare for war. Well, again, here's now this guy saying, hey, over here, look at me, look at me. No one took him seriously, and all of a sudden, everything just got quiet. In the past, North Korea would get concessions, like free oil, assistance in projects, food for free, things like that, when they acted that way. This time, they didn't get it. The West called North Korea's bluff. What happened? Nothing. They backed off.
So is this, point number 19, the
Yeah.
FDI, 1.4 billion?
Yeah.
Is that primarily from
China,
China?
overwhelmingly.
What's China to gain with North Korea?
Okay.
And what's the reason for the FDI?
I'm sorry for the...
The foreign direct investment, FDI.
Oh, okay. Sorry, brain cramp. The reason China is at all interested in North Korea has to do with geography.
Okay.
Okay? Now, back in the 40s and 50s, they were communist allies. You know, there was the war, Korean War, etc. So China and Soviets were both propping up North Korea. Well, the Soviet subsidies ended like that when the Soviet Union collapsed. China backed off as well. And then something happened in China. Mao Zedong died. Suddenly, the Chinese started experimenting with capitalism. And if you look at modern China today, I would argue they are not a communist country. They are a capitalist country with a dictatorship that calls itself communist to have some shred of legitimacy. So, China is in the difficult position of having to put up with North Korea, or having to put up with U.S. troops back on the Yalu River defending a unified Korea with the capital at Seoul. That's not in China's interest. So North Korea is a buffer state. Do you remember Afghanistan between the British down here? Between the British and the Russian empires? There it is. Where Afghanistan is over in this area, is a buffer. That's what North Korea is today for China. It is a buffer to keep American influence a little farther away from China and to keep us a bit occupied, if you will. Other than that, Chinese-North Korean relations have been souring over the past few years. Especially noteworthy are symbolic actions. Correct me if I'm wrong, those of you who have been in the Far East. But actions carry a lot of weight. If you insult someone, the impact is much stronger than in the West. You don't do that unless you really want to get to fighting. So, with that kind of a mindset in the regional culture, the new president of China went to Seoul. And they've announced new trade talks. They're even talking about a free trade zone between the two countries. He did not go Pyongyang. The president of South Korea, a woman, has been to Beijing as an invited guest of the Chinese government. Guess who has not yet gotten an invitation?
They don't have any money.
So China is saying in a typical Far Eastern, very polite manner, no direct offense, but by action saying, North Korea, cut the crap out. Get rid of the nukes. Oh, forgot. The president of South Korea and the new president of China signed a joint declaration condemning any nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula. Now, there's only one country that has weapons right now on the Korean Peninsula. I give you one guess who that is. Yeah, North Korea. So they didn't mention it by name as, again, that veneer of politeness and civility, but they made their point. Get rid of the nukes. China will guarantee North Korea's security. They do not have to spend 1/3 of their GDP the way they do. That's the ideology, I would argue the religion of North Korea is driving some bizarre behavior. And that's why he has to do something bizarre like this. Any other questions on these 20 facts about North Korea?
I see this border is kind of,
Yeah,
the 38th parallel, is that,
roughly here.
okay.
It's in that area, but the border is where they stop fighting on a certain day.
Okay,
There was a ceasefire called. Where you were, that's the border.
okay.
It is not that far. Seoul is within artillery range of this area in North Korea. And there's a lot of North Korean artillery right in this area. It is a forward deployed army. It's an army that's prepared to move at any time. It is an army that has a lot of special forces. Their idea is to insert them back into various areas of South Korea to cause chaos. Because they know their military could not stop the South Koreans on a straight up fight. So they're trying unconventional tactics in the event of war. Yes?
How did North Korea get enough money to promote the missile program that they...
Simple. Starve your people.
Well, didn't we intervene though with when they had a huge shortage of food or something?
Yeah, there was a massive shortage in the 90s. When the Soviet Union stopped aid in '89, North Korea went because all of a sudden all the aid's gone. The thing that was propping up their economy was suddenly gone. So they went through severe malnutrition and food shortages and famine, some reports of cannibalism, from the 90s. However, earlier this year there have again been unconfirmed reports of severe food shortages and cannibalism. Can you prove it? No. Because you can't get a foreign reporter in there to even find out. So what you get are defectors, people who have successfully escaped North Korea. You get journalists who go on the official guided tours and show what the regime wants them to see, who occasionally slip their minders and see some things they're not supposed to. And one even got out a whole bunch of pictures through a phone. Apparently the miner didn't realize a camera phone could actually transmit to the internet. Well, he didn't have one. He didn't know what it was. Yes?
When you mentioned the famine, there was recently a documentary I saw called Crossing the Line. And it was about an American who did cross the line and go into North Korea. And he told about his life there. And he's still there and married, and so forth.
Yeah, he was a defector to the north. There were a few during the Korean War.
But what was interesting was during the famine, he always had food. He was always provided with food.
Yes, he was. Because he was useful as a piece of propaganda.
Yeah.
This is a regime who, number 10 on 20 facts about North Korea. Kidnapped the South Korean film director and his wife. Drug them north and ordered them to create a North Korean, DPRK is the designation for North Korea, film industry. After making many films, they escaped to the West. This guy was a film buff, by the way. He had a huge library of Western films. Yes?
I read, I don't follow some of the newer movies, but I just scanned something the other day there's some comic film out about making fun of Kim, and he says if it's shown, it'll be war or something.
Oh, yeah. Everything's war. I don't know how many times North Korea's declared war on us. I don't know how many times North Korea said the armistice is over, we're going back to shooting now. If I had a nickel for every time they said that, I think I'd just be a pile of nickels, frankly. So the threat doesn't carry a lot of weight. But does anybody know the name of that movie offhand? I'm forgetting it.
It hasn't been released yet.
Hasn't been released yet. It's about two ne'er-do-wells who are recruited to kill Kim Jong-un. Sneak into North Korea and kill the leader. And it's a farce. And it's actually the two agents who are the idiots of the movie. But because they mentioned the supreme leader's name, this is wrong in war, and how dare you offend the dignity of the People's Republic of North Korea.
Part of 30 Rock, they make fun of Kim Jong-un
Oh yeah,
in the later seasons.
yeah. There's a number of Western programs that have made fun of Daddy,
Have
the
they-
film buff.
Do they, I know they did last time, but do they normally compete in the Olympics? Or
Yes,
South
they compete
Athletes?
under their own flag as a separate nation. And occasionally North and South Korea will meet on a soccer field or...
Yeah, I think during the 2010 World Cup, North
Mhm.
Korea made it somehow. And the stands were packed with Koreans that were there in South Africa,
Yeah.
all cheering lively throughout the entire
Do they
game.
try, does the media try to get information from those athletes when they're
Oh,
outside
yeah.
of the country?
But every North Korean that was allowed to go was probably screened for political reliability. In other words, only the faithful, only the most devout adherents of the religion of Kim Sung-ilism
Yeah.
would even be allowed the possibility of maybe, perhaps, going.
No defectors.
Oh, no.
Nobody who.
Oh, there's always a few. There's always a few who pretend awaiting an opportunity and run as fast as they can, knowing their whole family may wind up in a concentration camp as a result.
That was my question, don't they have family?
Oh yeah, if you got family, they will be punished.
Oh, yeah.
And that's part of what helps the regime prevent defectors.
Are their families separated? Some are in the south and some are in the north?
Some from the Korean War.
Still
They're
from
getting
there?
up there. But there are families that were separated by the war. The North will not allow them to leave for the South. The ones in the South do not want to go live in the North. So they meet when the North allows it. There are certain areas off and on, off and on. I think it's on now, but it had been off earlier in the year. Again, that's used like a carrot stick. It's everything that is calculated toward what can we get out of you? What concession can we get from the West? What concession can we get from China? But even China's beginning to be fed up with the antics. Yes?
Well, in your list here, 16 school children provide their own desks, chairs, and money to pay for heat.
That's right.
So how many kids go to school?
Good question, because many parents, to save money, bribe the teacher and don't send their kids to school. Imagine living in a country where all the men are assigned a factory or a workplace based on your political reliability, not your job skills. You can see already where this is going. So you go to your factory. You're supposed to work on this machine, but there's no electricity. Machine doesn't work. Oh, let's make matters even better. The machine's been broken for 5 years and no one can fix it. But you still have to be there. So you show up. For 40 hours a week, you get a pittance, and that is your job. Your spouse, who does not have to go work in an assigned place, it is a sexist society, then, she can go grow some vegetables in the garden and go to a local market and sell them. She's bringing in the income. It's a lot more than what he gets. Most North Korean families subsist on what their wives make on side jobs. The men can't because they have to go to the state job, which doesn't pay much at all.
You mentioned 40 hours. Is that in fact a 40-hour week over there, or
Whatever.
60 or?
Actually, it could be a 10-hour week for what they do. It doesn't matter.
Oh, no, I understand that.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I'm assuming 40, 50-hour week. Because it'd be useful for propaganda, because it really doesn't matter, because they're not producing anything.
No wonder China would be frustrated if they're giving aid.
It's a black hole.
Yeah.
For China, it's a pain in the neck. It is a black hole sucking resources.
So all these children are just not being educated at all?
Or in the home.
Homeschooled?
Yeah, homeschooled, whatever. Officially, they're 100% literate. That's what the government says.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of wonder about their credibility.
They must be somewhat aware, though, of what's going on in South Korea.
No.
I mean, even when the South Koreans come, north to meet with their families, they must tell them, hey, we have Samsung, they're building all this wonderful equipment and stuff.
And the North will tell you they're lying at the threat of gunpoint. They must tell you these lies, otherwise they will be executed because life is so bad in the South. They're lying to you, and that's what the regime will tell these people. Yes?
Back to China, are they, as the South Koreans did, are they using North Korea as a source for very cheap labor?
Yeah, the
Or do
limited
we
though.
know?
There was a few attempts. There's a couple of special economic zones. The Chinese did that, Shanghai area, a few others. That's what really fueled China's rise as an economic power. North Korea set up a couple of them in this area. But the problem was the government's reliability. There were some Chinese entrepreneurs that went in and sunk some serious money in infrastructure. Then North Korea just took it over. Now, you're a Chinese businessman. You've just lost a few million because the North Korean government just took it. What are you going to do? You going to go back and do it again? Heck no! So the economic zones, the special economic zones of North Korea have been a flop because of the government's inability to provide even basic security. I mean, everything is a bribe. And a certain amount of bribes you can work with in business in some parts of the world. But they just come in and take the whole thing over. The uncle. Do you remember the uncle who was executed? You may have heard of that.
Yeah.
His uncle, who was supposed to be the mentor.
Yeah.
Did you hear about the battle between supporters of Kim Jong-un and the uncle? Yeah, it didn't get off the radar in the West too much. But I believe it was up in one of the special economic zones. I'd have to check. But essentially, there was a factory that was not giving the kickbacks to him, but to the uncle directly. So this guy Jong-un sends agents to the factory, pay up. There's a battle. The workers there refuse to give it to him. Within 24 hours, uncle is arrested, tried, and executed in a show trial. So, was it about all this treason, or was it because he wasn't getting his cut? I'll leave it to you to figure out. Anything else on this list of 20 that jumps out at you?
I like this idea of putting the wife to work. I mean, I like
Yeah, but notice who's earning the money. She is, not him.
Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
Are there any children, like in China, they are very adamant you have one child or anything like that?
No,
Is there
they're not
anything
picking
like
up the one-child policy. North Korea is not going that route, to my knowledge. Yes?
North Korea's Navy.
Yes?
Thank you. Do
It
they
has
have
some-
anything that floats?
Actually, what they've done is because they know they cannot compete with anybody in terms
It
of
just
naval
takes
force.
too much material to produce a ship.
Right.
Yeah.
Much less the technology, much less the training, much less the resources to keep the sailors at a high level of readiness. They can't do it for their army, which is far more important for them in their position. So they do have some patrol boats, they do have some mine layers, and they have more submarines than any other nation in the world. But
You can't see them.
They have screen doors.
no, because the submarine is about 15 feet long. It's a midget sub. One person, or maybe 30 feet long, 2, 3 people. person
But
subs.
size doesn't matter.
I can see this on YouTube now. Oh well. A quick end to a short career. There is actually a method to the madness in this case. Most of the time in North Korea, there's just a madness to the madness. But in this case, there is a method to the madness. There's a lot of them, and the idea is to sneak into the coasts. Go in offshore, 2, 3 submarines, 9, 10 people in cells, to come in and attack South Korean infrastructure, villages, hamlets, cause chaos in the rear in the event of an invasion. They have dug tunnels under the DMZ. 2 of them have been found. There may be more. And the idea is that you can just take their state-of-the-art 1975 T-61 tanks and roll them directly into South Korea, bypassing the DMZ defenses entirely. So yeah, it would be messy for about a week.
How did they ever
Then
get,
then North Korea would collapse in a military conflict.
how did they ever get nuclear capabilities? It doesn't sound like, how did that ever happen?
How did they do it? I cannot prove what I'm about to say. But there is some circumstantial evidence that they elicited help from Pakistan. The Pakistani government found the bomb. And there is some evidence that Pakistan gave North Korea some technical assistance. Now, the main problem with making a nuclear bomb in the 21st century is not so much how to build it. That may sound strange. It's not the technical. You want to learn how to build a nuke, you can find it on the internet. Plans are there. However, a thing called enriched uranium. Good luck. Oh, but that won't make a bomb. You've got to run it through, you've got to process that that enriched uranium. And you've got to process it until it becomes plutonium before you can build a bomb. That's why Iran had all those centrifuges going. They're trying to make weapons-grade uranium. And the Israelis and the U.S. government has now been admitted, put a software bug that caused the Iranian centrifuges to destroy themselves, to run out of control too fast and burn out their motors. Wrecked them. The Stuxnet virus, the first cyber attack in history. Do we have something in plan for North Korea's equipment? Should that happen? Probably. Are there ways of getting it there without the internet? Oh yeah. In fact, one of them is in this computer right now. It's called a flash drive.
So their leaders have access to the internet. They're getting things from out the outside world. Their leaders can get.
Oh, the leaders know all about the outside world. High military officials get permission to view the Western equipment, Western media. Their political and their propaganda wings are constantly monitoring Western transmissions, but the general population doesn't see it.
But what keeps them from revolting or assassinating one of these leaders?
Fear.
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 There's an informant system throughout the entire country, for one thing. The brutality of the regime is another. The third is you don't know how bad you've got it. All you hear is how good you've got it, and how bad it is in the South, and how poverty-stricken we are in the U.S.
But they can't be that stupid.
They don't know.
No, but the leaders
They
know.
don't know. They're not here. How can they find out?
Isolation.
They're in isolation. It's the hermit kingdom.
But the leaders know. If
anyone
they've got the
our
internet,
age,
they
you
can
know,
know
like
whatever they
us
want.
kids his age, we would be raised in this. We'd have no clue.
You'd have no clue. Everything from birth would tell you they're starving in the South. 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 What was that? The rubber band? How many times before you start to believe it?
If you had to ballpark, how many high military leaders would actually know this type of stuff?
Maybe
50?
Oh, I'd say maybe 2 to 3% of the
Of the military?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your elites.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, yes?
Do the people of North Korea and South Korea look alike? I mean, other than the dress, I suppose.
Other than the fact they're shorter and tend to have poorer dress, they look pretty much the same. Ethnically, they're the same. They have not been separated long enough for ethnic differences to start to appear.